My name's Amanda Burma. I'm with Frog Logic, and today we're going to be going over finding dynamic objects using a parent object. So the application that I've chosen today is an application that's available as part of the examples when you have the Qt STK. It's just the example I happen to have chosen. You can see it's a dancing robot, colors all around, and each time you open this application, a different set of colors appear. You can drag and drop the colors to change the color of the robot. Now, because each time I execute this, different colors appear, if I were to run this script, it's not going to work this next time because those colors are part of how we're finding that object. So if I click Run, it's not going to be able to find those objects and drag and drop them, and will then return an object not found. So because it's not able to find the object, I'm running it from the IDE where we have our object not found dialog, and that's going to show me the error that would have appeared had I not been using this feature or I'd been running that unmanned. And what it's giving me the option to do is look at the properties that it was trying to use to find that object. I can go out now and select what I feel is the same object, and it's going to highlight the differences for me between those two objects. And you can see the difference being the tooltip value. The tooltip value is illustrating the RGB color of the particular item I'm trying to drag and drop. So let's click throw error here, and we'll stop our test execution. So again, it couldn't find that object to drag and drop. So what are we able to do to find that object? We don't know in advance what colors are going to display, and therefore we don't have those objects, maybe not in our object map, or we have no knowledge of them. So what we need to do first is get the parent object. So to find out what the parent object of this particular object is, we'll right click on the symbolic name and open that in our object map, and we can see the container that it comes from, or its parent object. So we'll copy that one, and what I want to do is I want to first get that object in my script. Now once I have that, I can then identify all of the children in that object by using one of the modules that we have on our knowledge base or our test suite resource. It's downloadable from our knowledge base, and at the end of this presentation I'll have the links for that. But here we have get child object by property. It is a Python script that goes through, again downloadable from our knowledge base, and it will collect and return in a list all the child objects based on property values that you share. And you can set a maximum amount. I have it to -1 so that it returns all of those. Also has verbose setting for troubleshooting. So what I'm going to do here is I want to say, okay, I want my child items, and I want them to be retrieved using one of the functions in that module. So in order to tell the script that I want to use that, I will indicate where to find it in the scripts tab. And now any function from there is available. So if we go back to that script, I'm going to copy this top function is the one that you want to use here. And we can see our parameters. We're going to use these first two parameters and leave the others as their default. So here I'm going to have my parent object. And then here what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some properties that I'm going to use to be able to find the child object. So this child object is of a specific object type, and I'm interested in that type. So if I go back to my object map and look at that, I can see that this object is of type QGraphicsItem. So that's what I'm going to use. I could use more than one property and value to identify which child items to pull as well using this script. So what I'm going to do is type in here that I want to use type, and my type is going to be QGraphics item. So now that I have this and I'm able to retrieve it, what I can do, let's get rid of these additional drag and drops. We'll stick with the single. Instead of using this symbolic name here, what I'm going to do is use the child item that's returned. Now, multiple child items are going to be returned because we have multiple colors in that application. So just to demonstrate to you selecting one of them, I'm just going to use the 0th item that's returned. Now from here, these are all relative coordinates, and so we can use those coordinates, or one of the things I recommend is if you're switching resolutions and different systems, change it to 5 by 5. There's going to be pixel 5 by 5 or XY coordinate 5 by 5 in most of your objects that you need to interact with. Otherwise they'd be too small. But again, it's a relative coordinate. So we'll click Run here. And you'll see it drag and drop. So it was able to drag and drop that object. Now what if I wanted to iterate through, and for every color I have on the palette I want to make sure they all drag and drop? So what you can do is something very similar. You take that same drag and drop statement as we had before, except instead of passing in the object's symbolic name as we retrieved from the child items, what we're going to do is we're going to pass in that item's we're going to use that object's real name, and remember only one portion of that's changing, and so that portion I've made a variable, and from that child item I'm just collecting the tooltip value. So each time I have that tooltip value, I can then iterate through and it will select all of the different colors. Now I'm using that entire tooltip string, which includes more than just the RGB value. So if I wanted to create a script that also gave me access to use that RGB value, maybe I want to reuse it someplace else, I can also use a regular expression to parse just down to the RGB value and use that in my script. And I'll show that to you as soon as this is done executing. So that executes without issue. So what I was just speaking to here is the fact that I can then, instead of just taking that drag and drop item and entering it in, what I'm doing is I'm going and getting this color item. So I'm looking for colors in my color palette, and that's called from Get Color Palette up here. So Get Color Palette takes in that list of child items, declares an array, and then here what it's doing is it's saying, okay, find just the RGB code of the tooltip. Return that to this list, and we're returning the entire color palette, at which time it's able to iterate back through, but I also have the value of each of those colors. So I've set a breakpoint, I'm going to click Run, and I'll show you some of those variable values that were captured. So we can see here some of the different variables that were captured. We have our color item, which is our object that we captured. Then we have the current color palette. So this is a list of 10 strings and then each of the RGB codes. So now we have available to us simply the RGB codes, and we can use those in our script as well. Evaluate today. Go to froglogic.com evaluate for your free 30-day evaluation. And also check out our resources at froglogic.com resources, where you have access to our knowledge base, documentation, other videos, tech papers, and information, as well as emailing squish@froglogic.com for support.